I knew something was up when our grocery budget increased enough to feed another person. I, 38, was the working partner, while my wife, 35, was at home with our 2 kids. They were almost old enough for kindergarten, but until then, it made more sense for her to stay home with and give them their preschool education. It worked out well for us, and pretty often we had family game nights, usually hide and seek in the dark, and times when my wife and I sat down to talk about things like all couples should. One night when I got home, my younger daughter asked if we could play hide and seek in the dark so that I could find the man in the house. I was really confused, but my wife laughed and said that was for Narnia. We decided to play some games that night. I totally forgot about my daughter's comment. About 1 week later, my wife and I sat down to review the budget. She spent way more on groceries, once again, and when I asked her why, she didn't know what to say besides she only got what we needed. I asked if this included toiletries, and she said yes, but the math just didn't add up. I gave her a new budget to stick to, but 1 month later, while we were talking again, she spent even more than the month before. I asked how much our kids eat, and she just laughed at me. I told her I was serious. We needed to survive off all the stuff we had in the pantry and stop spending so much money. Well, I didn't know it was the last time we would ever have a budget meeting again. It was the last time we did a lot of things. I got home from work a little early the next day, and I heard several footsteps upstairs. As I entered our bedroom, my wife shut the door of her closet fast and hard. She turned around and looked really scared. I asked what was going on and felt my heart rate escalating. She tried telling me nothing, but she wouldn't move away from the closet. I then moved her aside, and I whipped open the door. I turned on the light and was standing practically face to face with AP. I yanked him out and started yelling, asking who the hell he was and what he was doing there. My wife looked really freaked out when I found him. She could see her life ending before her eyes. I thought I recognized the scared man before me, but I couldn't remember how I knew him. Again, I demanded to know why he was in my wife's closet and who he was. He didn't want to say anything, but finally said his name was Josh. My little daughter piped up from the doorway and said he was Mommy's boyfriend. My jaw dropped, and my wife said no, he was just Mommy's friend, but I remembered now. He was my wife's ex from 4 years ago. What was I supposed to do? My daughters were witnessing all this. I grabbed the hair on the top of his head and drug him out of the bathroom, but he said he'd leave willingly. Outside, I asked him if he slept with my wife. He looked embarrassed but said yes. I punched him in the face and he fell to the ground. He said he didn't have anywhere else to go, so she let him come in whenever I was gone and saved him from starving. I told him he could set up camp in an alligator swamp for all I cared, but he was never seeing my wife again. He walked off. After the kids went to sleep that night, I told my wife to leave immediately. She was upset but didn't look like she believed I would kick her out. She got naked and laid on the bed, telling me she just cared about his well-being, but they never had sex, and now that I found out, the grocery budget would go back to normal. She said she realized now that she couldn't care for this man in my house with my money. She helped him for a while and said she was glad things were over with. I told her I knew they had sex. She instantly looked concerned, but not ready to confess. She asked why I thought that. I said because AP could have lied, but he didn't. He told me the truth because I recognized him as her ex. Her face started turning white at this point. I told her I wasn't an idiot, and I could see right through her. I knew she slept with him because she still had feelings for him and let him come into our house whenever I was gone, and kept it all a secret from me. She started to cry, and I knew I had her. She begged me to forgive her and swore she didn't expect any of this to happen. She just wanted to help someone in need, but she really only loved me and wanted to have our family for the rest of her life. I told her she made a very bad decision to keep him here and hidden from me. She put herself in a terrible situation. Her cheating was a likely and easy possibility. It was the hardest thing ever for us to tell the kids that Mommy was moving out. Even though they would still see her plenty, and she was only moving to Grandma's house, it was traumatizing. She lived with us, then she didn't. We didn't give the children the option to move, because it was better they primarily stayed with me. They didn't ask to go with their mom. They were just upset with her for letting in a man that wasn't daddy. This was her fault, and there wasn't any other way to look at it. My wife was sick with grief. She saw the kids a lot, and they even slept over at Grandma's house a few times with Mom, but it was hard. She asked me I don't know how many times to forgive her, but I couldn't. I didn't want or trust her anymore, not as my wife or a worthy motherly example. I hope she could prove me wrong in the latter. So far, she has. I started dating, but I don't let my kids know this. It would be a shame to involve them anymore in adult issues. OP, I am so sorry your wife was caring for and harboring her ex in the same house as your young kids. Who knows what they saw and how much they knew about it. It must have been very strange for them, and I hope you and your kids recover from this as peacefully as possible. I don't understand how your wife had the nerve to secretly let this man in the house, feed him, and repeatedly sleep with him. The disrespect and inconsideration for her family astounds me. I am relieved that you didn't try to forgive her or accept her reasoning for why she let him in. You convinced her you knew she was guilty, without a doubt, so she had no choice but to accept her fate. Why should she get a second chance to be a faithful wife and a good example for her kids when she blew it the first time? To make this kind of mistake is to prove that you need to learn a lesson in honesty and care for others. If someone doesn't want to learn these lessons the hard way, they can learn from the mistakes of others and become the person they'd hoped to find for themselves. I wish you all the best. Now let's get into our second story for today. One day, I was using my wife's cell phone to take a picture of our baby when I saw a message come in on an adult friend app. I have no idea why she didn't turn off notifications, but I hardly ever touched her phone, so maybe that was why. Needless to say, I freaked out on her. We just had our baby 2 months ago, and she was already trying to find someone else. I told her I thought men were supposed to be the ones cheating on their wives after childbirth, and she didn't appreciate that comment. She swore she wasn't sleeping with anyone, but I refused to speak to her for several days. I didn't help with the baby when she needed me to, only when she could have been the one to do it. I refused to watch our child so she could go out and do God knows what. After 4 days, she was begging me for a break for a few hours. She wanted to go out alone. I told her absolutely not. I said I wasn't stupid. I just found something incriminating on her phone, so why would I agree to let her go anywhere without me? She had no trust from me. So she started keeping me up at night. Even though it was the last few days before I had to return to work, she would wake me up every time the baby woke up. Even if I didn't get up, she just didn't want me to get any sleep. We were not on good terms, but I felt like I had to watch her. I didn't want our relationship to be over. I was building a life with her, and we just had a baby. This was breaking my heart, but I wasn't even sure if anything happened. She came to me a day later and offered an arrangement. She said there was a nice couple she knew from work before going on maternity leave, and they wanted to come over and hang out. She said if I let them come over, she'd let me sleep and resume all baby duties without complaint. In addition to that, she claimed she never actually cheated on me, so I was worried for nothing. I felt pretty defeated, but also relieved. I gave in. I slept really well that night and pretty much accepted that I had been worried for nothing. I now know that I was a fool. The next day, I had to work again. My shift was from 7 p.m. to 3 a.m. At 6 p.m., my wife's friends came over. She didn't warn me they were on their way, so I felt caught off guard. I wondered if I was prepared to leave my wife and new baby alone with these people. What if my wife cheated on me with one or both of them? They seemed nice enough. The girl was a little nervous to be there, like she suspected she was meeting her boyfriend's AP. Her boyfriend was happy to be at our house, even though I was there scowling at him. He pretended not to notice and mentioned how bummed out he was that I had to leave so soon after they got there. I didn't like him, and he knew it, but he didn't care. It was annoying, but I knew I had to go back to work. If I didn't show up on my first day back, I'd probably be fired. My wife swore she didn't do anything, and this was a romantic couple, so I kissed my wife goodbye and left. Driving to work felt weird. So after an hour of work, I felt like a moron when I pulled my boss aside to tell him what I suspected was going on at home. He told me to take care of whatever I needed to. So I raced home and barged in the front door to find my worst nightmare. All 3 of them were naked, in a pile in compromising positions in our living room. Music was playing loudly, the lights were dim, and it reeked of skunk smell. I turned on the lights and got out my phone to take pictures while they yelled and cursed and scrambled to get dressed. This was it, the gratifying and mortifying moment when I caught my wife in the act with two people I met face to face. It was partially my fault I was experiencing this because I agreed to let her have them over, and I left them all alone, even after finding the notification on her phone. At least now I had the proof I craved to officially divorce her. She was so out of it that night that she put her shirt on backward and didn't follow me upstairs when I got some of my stuff and her baby. When I came back down, she started crying and asked me not to leave or take the baby. I couldn't believe this was happening. I told her I just walked in on her cheating on me. At the very least, I needed time at my mom's to think things over. She looked nervous, but like she didn't know how to argue because she knew she was guilty and she wasn't thinking straight. I'm extremely lucky to have my mom. I don't know what I would have done if I didn't have her to go to in my time of need. The next morning, my wife called me 50 times. She was hungover and crying. She begged me to forgive her and blamed the couple for convincing her she deserved to party a little as a new mom. I guess that's persuasive enough to convince someone to cheat, but I know my wife was trying to cheat on me before these people came over. Maybe she met them online or something, but whatever it was didn't matter because I never forgave her. I saw her at the divorce, and since then, several times for visitation, but when I showed the pictures I had and gave my recount of events, I proved to be the more responsible parent. My wife is ashamed of her actions and regrets what she did every day because she is missing time with her offspring. I hope anyone going through this understands that it's not their fault their spouse cheated. This could happen to anyone, and there are so many people out there in the world. OP, you have been through a traumatic thing. Discovering a spouse's infidelity or adult friend apps is a serious thing, and there should be immediate consequences for those actions. I'm glad you didn't just go on living life as normal, but actually tried to find the truth. You followed your gut, even though it might have backfired on you, to leave work early and see what they were doing. Taking pictures was very smart, even though it must have been difficult in that stressful moment. Your wife was in such a guilty and bad place that she couldn't even stop you from leaving with the baby. It's a shame she led herself into that situation by inviting these people over. However, she met them. She wasn't considering you or the family you guys were building together. She didn't think about her child's future at all when she went behind your back. Cheaters beware. If you take time to think about the potential consequences and effects it could have on your children or loved ones or yourselves, you'll find it's always better to remain honest, even if the answer is divorce. But hopefully, through communication and honesty, relationship troubles can be resolved to keep the commitment and family intact. Thank you for sharing this story. I wish you all the best going forward in your recovery. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below with your thoughts on what happened. Take care.